How many people does it take to change an organization? All of them, exactly. And they have to want to change. And that's the real nub for local government, because I don't know if you've noticed that many local authorities are extremely adept at avoiding change at all costs. They will do whatever they have to do to pretend to change. They'll bring in consultants, they'll set up transformation teams and change teams, but actually when you look at what a lot of these teams are doing, they're fiddling around the edges of existing processes and making 2–3% savings, you know, an odd form changed here, a process slimmed down there, but in the great scheme of things, they're not actually changing anything fundamental about the organization. And that's part of the problem that we face. Now, the good news for you is I've only got 3 slides, not counting this one, and they've only got 2 words on each one, so I'm not going to tax you in any way. In fact, to avoid you having any sort of feeling of not knowing what's coming next, I'm going to tell you what's on them. Think big, think outcomes, and think benefits, because that's the answer. For me, the problem in local government is that we tend to be looking at too low a level. We're trying to make change happen at a very small level. Now, that can be okay if the organization as a whole knows where it's going, and those changes at the micro level are actually part of a much larger plan for change. I was speaking to, as I do, a head of IT last week in a county, and I've been talking to a lot of councils about the size of their contact centres. It's a sad thing I do, but I'm amazed at the size of some of the council's contact centres. And so I was saying, how big is your contact centre? 120 seats, she says. Wow, that's quite big. I presume that's all of your services go through that then? Yeah, pretty much. But she said, you've got to remember, that's only one of 5 contact centres serving this town. Because by the time you take the district council for the city into account, and the 2 neighbouring district councils, which kind of impinge on the town, and then there's the police have got their own contact centre, and the fire and emergency centre have got their own contact centre. And then, of course, that's not counting all the central government contact centres that cover this area as well. Right, so we've got 5 contact centres. Yes, but she said you've also got a replication of websites as well. In fact, it's more than 5. There's actually about 43 websites serving those 5 organizations. Okay, so then you think, well, then you've got all the reception points where you can actually go in and physically meet someone. Well, there's 30 of those. And so it goes on. So you've got 5 HR departments and payroll services and IT departments. Yes, they've all got their own data centers. And you think, you go and speak to the chief executive, as I did, and he said, Doug, I've got this huge problem. I've got to save 30% off my budget. How can we make savings? And I'm sitting there thinking, nope, can't think of anything you could say. It's so blindingly obvious. Local government is intrinsically inefficient in the way it works. And we look at these obvious cases of replication and duplication. Now, another county I was in just a couple of weeks ago, city council, county council, sitting with their headquarters in the same town, and you say, and they're both saying, we're desperate trouble, we've got to save money. And you say, have you spoken to each other? How about you share your data centers? Or how about you share your contact center? How about you share receptions? We don't speak to them. We haven't spoken to them for 15 years. So politically, we can't do it. Logically, it makes huge sense. So that's why I want to say one of the things we need to do is to think big. Now, think big at 2 levels. The level I've just been talking about, which is to look beyond your own organization, to say, for goodness sake, we're all serving the same customers. The organization that goes and collects their bins is, it's another organization that's providing adult social care if it's a 2-tier area. another organisation that's delivering healthcare, another organisation. These are all working for the same customers, and yet we're making it so difficult for them, and we're all spending millions of pounds on separate contact centres, separate websites. We're spending money like there's no tomorrow. And we're spending money as if it wasn't ours. Interesting. It is ours. We're spending and wasting our own money. But I think we need to think big within the organisation as well. I cringe when I see advertisements in the contracts press saying, you know, Council X is looking for consultancy support to help them implement lean. Well, that sounds good. But then you read beyond that and it says, in such and such a department, you know, environmental health. And you're thinking, here's a council that hasn't got beyond silos. Silos are the biggest obstacle to local government. And you can get so far, you can almost persuade the chief executive and the corporate management team that change is a good thing and you really need to embrace it. And then you start to make some progress and then the barriers come up. Oh, no, sorry, you can't do that. Councillor was in, big contact centre. And again, I'm saying, so all your services go through that contact centre, do they? Well, no, they don't. Because, I think it was environmental health in that case, went to members and said, we don't think we're getting the best service from this contact centre because we don't think the people who answer the calls really have that in-depth knowledge about environmental health. So it really needs to be environmental health people who answer the phone. So on that basis, please, can we come out of the contact centre? So, of course, members said, of course you can. Yes, of course. So along came highways, and they made the same argument, and so they withdrew. So then you're back to square one with these silos of departments competing against each other, and yet they've forgotten that they're actually serving the same customers. So even within the organisation, we're throwing away money. Now, this is a council, actually, I won't name it for obvious reasons, huge contact centre. They've also spent, well over £1 million on a website that actually delivers nothing. You know, they do not deliver services over that website. Yes, they get hits. They can tell you how many hits they've had, but in terms of useful delivery of informational services, next to zero. So they've spent £1 million on nothing. They've got a CRM system, like every council has, and you ask, well, what's going through that? Do the web transactions go through that? No, they don't go through that. Does the contact centre transactions go through that? Well, some of them do. Okay, so a CRM system, if I remember rightly, is a system for keeping track of a holistic view of what you know about your customers so you can serve them better. So what you've actually got is a partial view of some of your customers. So what use is that? Right, so the CRM is actually costing them, well, just in license costs, £50,000 a year. Now, bear in mind that this is a CRM system that the contact centre staff use, and it's quite separate from the web. So all the information that they use is quite different from the information that's on the website. So 2 teams of people have to maintain the content of both systems. You getting the message? This is crazy. And yet the chief exec says, I really can't think where I'm going to make some savings. It's there in front of you if you just look. Okay, so think big. That's the first thing to do. The next thing is to think outcomes. Thank you. Think outcomes, because the problem of local government in the past has been that we've been forced into a way of thinking about performance in terms of process. So we're wedded to process rather than outcomes. You just have to look at the key performance measures. It's all about how many days do you get before you have to respond to an application for adult social care, for example. I think it's 28 days you've got to have done your initial assessment after the first inquiry. Who cares whether it's 28 days? Do I care if it's 27 or 29? I care if I get a good service. But we're forced into thinking it's these silly measures that matter.